All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the Creators Lounge podcast. My goal with this podcast is to kind of give you guys some insight to the music scene, how music is made, the artist's inspiration, all that kind of stuff. And so that being said, today's episode I'm really excited to bring to you guys. This guy has done a whole lot with his career and he still has a lot more to go. All right, my man, Spitfya. Introduce yourself. Let these people know who you are.
Hi, I'm Spitfya, and I'm also known as my real name, Karl. I've been making music for about 7 years now. I primarily make EDM and dubstep and stuff like that.
All right, fantastic, man. So before we get too deep into things, I always like to start from the beginning. What was like your reason for getting into music? How did that all start?
That's a funny question. How I got into music was actually a funny story. So before I did music, I used to do gaming, like game dev, slight bit of game dev. So I was active in the Sonic, Mario, Mega Man, Unity community quite a lot back into like the early 2000s and the late 2000s of the last century. And when I discovered emulation, for example, because we use emulators to like rip and sample sounds from the games and graphics, we rip them through screenshotting like it's a 2D game. And one thing that no one had ever done before was find a way to rip the instruments from a Game Boy Advance cartridge. So any Game Boy Advance game, nobody figured out how to rip them. There was no program for it. Nobody knew the format, how it worked, how to like get rid of like the protection on it. So, by absolute boredom, I picked up a copy of Sonic Advance 2. Just one of my favorite franchises is Sonic, by the way. And I proceeded to mess around with the memory editor. And I managed to track down the code that basically controls the sound. And I ended up crashing it in a certain way where it basically started playing. So it would play like a C of a lead that was audio. It was an audio one-shot that loops. And I would freeze it there. I'd crash it in a particular place. And I would then try and reset all the values to like whatever they used to be. And it would start playing all of the audio data in order from when that sound played all the way to the end of the data to where it becomes white noise and just gibberish. And I recorded that, separated them all, put them into a sound font, and then I got myself a copy of FL Studio. And I made a sound font, and also the first way to rip Game Boy Advance instruments right out of the game. It's emulation, but it's emulated, but it's still the data nonetheless. And
dude, that's crazy.
Yeah, because people were like, "There's no way you can do this, and nobody knows how to do it." And then by pure chance, I was just like, "Oh, I do. I did it the other day by accident, and I made a video about it as well on one of my really, really old channels somewhere. If you search up my name, and yeah, you'll find like a channel or something, a deserted channel from like a decade ago where it's got like a stupid description of how I did it, and also that I don't know what I'm doing."
Man, dude, that's crazy. So like right from the start, like you're into video games and that kind of scene. Music isn't a complete 180, but it is very different. So what was so after like you started doing like the emulation and like the sampling from the video games, I guess that just kind of started you producing music?
Yeah, so one of my friends from a while ago had just a copy of FL, and I was like, "How do I use these?" And he was like, "Oh, I use this thing called FL Studio." I'm like, "Oh, what's that?" He's like, "It's just a door." I'm like, "What the fuck's a door?" So then I just I got that, and I think it was like late 2011. And I just started messing around with them, and then, as I said before, I made a sound font out of the sounds and gave it away to people. And then I started using them to make songs, even though I had no idea what I was doing. It probably sounded like absolute crap back then. But that's pretty much how it started. And I don't know. I didn't really see much future in what I was doing because in my mind, I was in like that state of mind where you're like, is this really what I want to do? Do I really want to do game dev in uni and college and stuff like that? And I didn't go to college for it in the end. So my path just kind of changed by chance, really.
Man, that's crazy, dude. And by the way, a quick jump back because you mentioned Sonic's one of your favorite games. I completely am with you on that one. Shadow the Hedgehog for the win.
Oh yes,
Love the character design on that. By the way, do you still play video games or not?
I do, but they're more FPS based. I don't really play Sonic that much anymore. I don't really like the direction the Sonic team and Sega's taken it. But I love the old ones. I love all of the old ones. So we're talking like you said, Shadow of the Hedgehog, Sonic Adventure 1, 2, and then all the 2D ones before that. And actually, that's a lie. I played Sonic Mania, which is one of the latest ones they came out with, which was a... Oh, that's a funny story.
We have time, man. Go ahead.
So I know, or at least used to know, the people who made that game. Like the guy called Christian Whitehead, the guy called Taxman, who actually made the entire engine that Sega used for Sonic Mania, and a couple of the people who worked on it. I used to know them, like, because I was part of that scene at the time. And it's so funny to see us going from homebrew, like, I wonder how this physics works. I wonder how Sonic goes around the loop and doesn't get stuck on the floor. Blah, blah, blah. All this maths and shit involved. And all the way from that to, oh, we work for Sega now. So it makes me think, like, if I carried on, could I have done the same thing? Could I have been working for Sega, making Sonic Mania, working on the sprites and the engine and the concepts and the level design? You know, it's one of those things where it's funny knowing that it was actually more possible than I ever thought in the past.
That's crazy, man. Yeah.
So yeah, when I saw the credits for it and I saw the engine, I thought, wow, I worked with those dudes 5 years ago.
Wow, that's crazy. That's insane, bro. Yeah, and I guess it's like you said, like, you can't ever really know for sure, but that's kind of like the whole story of life, is that we constantly have to make choices that we think are best at the time and kind of follow where it takes us to.
Yeah.
Would you say you're happy with your choice to get into music more so?
Being absolutely honest, I'm a bit conflicting at the moment. I'm trying to find the direction of where I'm going to go next, because a lot of this will probably fall into questions later on. But I'm trying to figure out where I want to go next, because where I am right now isn't working for me anymore. So we're talking like, when's your next dubstep song, man? Yeah. I'm just like, dubstep's so decade ago. For me, like, I don't dislike dubstep, but a lot of the modern dubstep I hear is, for lack of the nicest word I can use, is uninspired. Not to bash any particular people, but a lot of I never check my SoundCloud stream anymore unless it's things from Monstercast like that, where it's like some new electro or even Liquid City and UK drum and bass. I started. Oh, that's a funny thing. It links into the question from earlier. I was heavily influenced by drum and bass, like Pendulum, Metric, Shockwave. Is it Shockwave or Shockwave? One of those. And yeah, a couple of those people from the old labels in UKF, the old UKF. So definitely Pendulum and the Prodigy as well, really early on in the early 2000s when they came up with their stuff. Those are like some of my first influences in music ever.
Right, man. That's deep. And I wanted to backtrack real quick because we talked about dubstep, drum and bass. Whenever you first got into FL Studio, you were using sound fonts and messing around with like video game sounds. What kind of genre of music did you make at first?
Drum and bass. My attempt at drum and bass.
You gotta leak that stuff online, bro.
Yeah. If you look hard enough.
It's probably out there.
Oh yeah, I can even give you details right now on how to find it later on if anyone's watching and was curious. Search Chili Twilight Sparkle Blaze and you'll find it something, which is actually my first song in FL ever. And it's a drum and bass breakbeat. I have no idea what it is, but have a listen.
Dude, yeah, let's pull it up and play it.
Oh, God.
Nah, like, for real, though, like, the first try is always, like, it's the worst, honestly, because, like, you're just doing it, you know, and you don't have any idea how it's going to turn out, and you look back years later, you're embarrassed, but at least you started, I guess.
Yeah, it was something.
So, what was kind of the motivator for you to switch from doing drum and bass, breakbeat, and switching over to doing stuff like dubstep or other genres in the EDM?
The introduction to Skrillex. Knife Party and all the other classics. Yeah. So the first thing of dubstep that I ever heard would have been so I used to watch I a couple videos on YouTube. I used to be on YouTube much more active than I am now. I used to like religiously watch stuff on YouTube all the time. And back then, I used to watch a cappella covers of songs where people would literally remake it with their voice alone. And there was this guy called Ironic Stuff who made an a cappella version of Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites. So 2011, me saw this and thought, what the hell is this? So eventually, after I got past the funny sounds he made with his mouth to try and emulate what I now know is a growl, a song that is literally just a growl, I found the original and listened to that, and I heard the sounds I was hearing, and I was just like, that's crazy. Just makes me think of Transformers and stuff like that at the time.
So it kind of triggered some like memories and like nostalgia for you, and then you kind of started to emulate it in FL Studio, I guess.
Well, sound design was, for me, was very secondary for the first couple of years. It was just trying stuff out. I had no idea. I had no foundation in my mind of what works and what doesn't. So I did what I did for like 2 or 3 years, just random stuff. And then eventually I started taking it more seriously. I started to experiment with Massive more, which is a VST I used to use and still use quite religiously now. And yeah, I just only really when I changed from Blaze to Spitfya did I really start paying attention to sound design, only because changing from FL to Ableton changed my workflow completely. So I was reintroduced to stuff at my current mindset rather than having old habits, if you know what I mean.
Right. So whenever you switched over from, because previously to the audience listening, Spitfya used to produce under the name of Blaze, was quite successful. At some point he became Spitfya instead. And during that switch, if I'm correct, you switched DAWs as well, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Okay, gotcha. And it was very difficult, I guess, for you to make that switch. Is that right?
At first, yeah. I actually did make something on the Blaze, which was in Ableton. It was the first thing I ever did in Ableton. It was an Aspiration VIP, the old song I did called Aspiration. It was, I think it was dubstep mix of Aspiration, was done entirely in Ableton. It's utterly terrible, but it was my first Ableton song. It was the first time ever using it.
And the song did pretty well, if I remember correctly. I think it was featured on like Airwave TV and some other music channels like that on YouTube.
Oh yeah, that was definitely one of my most successful songs of Blaze. Don't know how it took off so much.
I was curious about that. Did you submit it to YouTube music channels, or did they just pick it up by finding it?
They just picked it up. It was something that I was working on for a while. It drove me absolutely crazy near the end, trying to give it a feel and a point to it, kind of, because it on some of the early versions it sounded a bit uninspired, and there was no real hook, or there was not much emotion going on. Oh yeah, the intro to Aspiration, the original version, I dreamed the entire intro, and that's why the song exists in the first place.
Whoa, that's cool. That's insane. You literally had a dream.
So the entire intro, I dreamt it. Yeah, I dreamt it. Woke up, got my PC and made like a really early version of it, and then the next day I started working on the actual song.
That's massive, dude. How are you able to transfer it from your head into the workstation?
Because I woke up so instantly after I heard it in my head. I was like, I gotta write this. I gotta make this now before I forget. So I did. It's one of the only times where I've been able to just somehow wake up immediately and not get up the next day and like, crap, I don't remember what it was, but it was cool. I remember ish.
Right, dude. Everybody struggles with that. Everyone always wakes up from a dream with this vision, but then it quickly fades. I think that's cool that you were able to capture it. And let's talk about, if we could talk about Blaze for just a minute, if you're okay with it. I was curious about what was the reason that you switched from promoting under Blaze to Spitfya now.
A lot of it was to disassociate from my previous self, because I felt like I was becoming outdated with my own expectations. So I wanted to like just completely jolt myself into a different direction or something, try and push myself up a bit more in my standards and my creativity and my actual ability to make what I want to hear. So that was one of the reasons that I just wanted to change, and I noticed that the name Blaze was far too common. and people started. There's a couple of things that happened. Like people would mistake me for another Blaze that I didn't know about. I remember once I got promoted on MA Music, and they tagged the wrong Blaze, and this Blaze was like an acoustic guy who did like this band, and he was absolutely flaming me on Twitter. Like, it's like, this guy is EDM trash, man. I make real music. What is this shit? How dare you tag me?
Oh my gosh!
I ended up blocking the dude because it's absolute, like, yeah, that word. He was absolute that word, and I just.
It is not even your fault.
Honestly,
it's not even your fault.
I don't know. It was just there's a couple of things like that happened all at the same time. A couple of other things as well that I can't mention happened.
Sure, and it all kind of culminated to make you want to change the name. What I think is interesting to me is the fact that you went from I feel like your life is kind of in a sort of pattern, if I could say, not to be rude or whatever, but you went from doing video games, and then had the switch to doing Blaze, and then after Blaze you became Spitfya. It seems like you're kind of accustomed to making like big changes in your life.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's about to happen again.
It is, exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Except not as dramatic, though, hopefully. I don't plan on just be like, hello, I'm DJ Forehead.
But if you want to try that, it could probably be successful.
Oh, believe me, I've thought of other aliases than this one. In the time that I've made this one, I thought of doing side aliases for different musical styles that I wanted to pursue. I haven't done it yet, but the ideas are still written down somewhere on a notepad.
Right. And it's interesting to me because there's a few artists that come to mind that do make like that name change. Off the top of my head, the ones I think of are like Fox Stevenson, who used to promote as like Stan SB. Recently, Madsen Project, who now switched to just Madsen. Another one would be Nano B, who has like a side project called Linus from the Stars. What do you think about other artists who switch their names and everything? How do you see that? Because you've gone through it yourself.
A lot of their changes appear to have benefited them. Like one example I can think of now, thinking about it, is Chime. The transformation that Chime has made between his old alias and his new alias is absolutely concrete. I don't know how he's pulled it off, but he's managed to go from someone who's there and everywhere, but sometimes just kind of there every now and again, didn't make amazing music, didn't make crappy music, to someone who's pumping shit out constantly over and over and over again. It's not even remotely bad at all. And some of it's downright catchy. I remember some of his earlier stuff he would show me, and I'd be like, man, I can't stop playing this song. Please release this. And like he does shows. He's incredibly successful, probably financially better off as well. He's just everything about him. He's just a decent guy. He's just a genuine dude. When I met him a couple months ago, he's just honestly like what I couldn't think of a better role model for anyone else than like as an example of transformation working out and how to pull it off properly. Chime is one of the best examples I can think of.
Well, it's really cool, man. And it sounds like you guys have a very close bond as well. I was curious, how did you choose the name Spitfya?
It was influenced by three things. So, let me try and remember. So one of them was one of my favorite songs at the time was one of my favorite releases on my favorite label, Ausler, which was the first release they had, was Spitfya by Porter Robertson. So that was one of the reasons. I tried to find connections to something that would give me an ultimate name. The second thing was my favorite song by The Prodigy on one of their albums, which was Spitfya. And my favorite color scheme is, at the time, it was yellow, orange, and red, which is the color scheme of a cartoon character called Spitfya. And my parents and my brothers have a military background, which involved planes, and it's kind of just one of those things where I thought, that'll do. And then I thought, okay, so now I don't want to be people searching up planes when they're trying to find me. So this time when I made the name, I'm like, I'm going to make it a bit more unique. I'm not going to have an upside down V for an A. I'm going to just Spitfya.
Yeah, gotcha, man, gotcha. That's cool. It kind of like came together from different influences. I think that's really interesting.
It's Music Break. This is an exclusive unreleased track from Spitfya. And even better, it's a collaboration with the very talented duo In Fowler. The song is currently entitled Together, but it's still just a work in progress. So keep your eyes open for the future release.
We all need to find our way. We all move together. We all need to find our way. We all move together. We all need to find our way.
Another thing I wanted to look at was because like you've done different projects throughout the years. What are some of like the core impacts you want to make as a music producer, as an artist?
I just kind of want to show people that certain things that may have existed that people liked don't have to be left in that time frame. They can be brought forward and modernized, done in different ways. Like just because someone's done, a lot of people think, "Oh, someone's done that, I can't do that now." Well, that's kind of bullshit, to be honest. That's a very defeatist mindset. Just because something exists doesn't mean you can't take inspiration from it. You can't expand it further than that person did in your perspective. And that's exactly what Aspiration was. It was inspired by Syndicate by Skrillex. I loved the feel of that, and nothing came since or before it like that. It had its own vibe, its own space. So I tried to emulate that, and it turned into one of my most successful songs as that alias. So it's just one of those things where I know people might compare me to Skrillex sometimes and stuff like that, but you know, you're always going to get compared to someone because everyone's done almost everything by now. So someone will own something more than someone else. Just because I make a growl doesn't mean I'm Skrillex. You know what I mean? It just means I've made a growl. He may have made that song popular, sure. But, you know, if I make an analog synth, it doesn't make me Rob Swire or Deadmau5. It's just one of those things. I don't know.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, man. It makes sense. I think that's cool. Last week, a few weeks ago, we had Alex from Hyperbolt EDM on the show, and he talked about his channel and how even though a lot of people nowadays focus on lo-fi and future bass, his channel, he still likes to promote stuff like electro house or dubstep, and some of the genres that were really popular back in 2013 era. I kind of see the similarities between you guys' mindsets about like not giving up on something you love and recreating something that means something to you. I think that's really cool. And speaking of recreating stuff that's important to you, I know you've done remixes before of Skrillex songs like Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites, Try It Out, just to name some of the ones I've heard. What is it like to remix a song? How do you start a remix?
A lot of the remixes start more spontaneous than planned. So the Skrillex ones, for example, Try It Out one came from me in a call with one of my friends on Skype many years ago, just blurting out the random idea, what would Try It Out sound like if it was in the style of his song Syndicate? Fast forward a month, I did an entire remix on that style of that song, and then I released it because people were like, "I like this, release this," and that's exactly what I did. And then the Scary Monsters Nice Brights one was also an accident, if even more of an accident. I was editing a song of Skrillex's for someone. I used to do this a lot for people. I used to get paid for it as well, which is funny. People would pay me to edit things or remake old versions of stuff because they just wanted to hear it, so I would do it. So I got one of his old songs and I made it into an instrumental. I removed the vocals and stuff like that, edited out. So it's just the build up, but I remade some parts that I couldn't edit out. And for no reason at all, I just threw in the Scary Monsters vocals over the drop in a certain pattern. And the pattern you hear on the drop, on the final one, is the pattern that existed in the demo. And it was on a completely different song. So I used that as a template to remix the entire song, basically. I kind of heard it and I thought, I'm finding this remotely catchy somehow. So I just went with it. And then, yeah, a couple months later, there it is. There's the remix.
How interesting, man. How interesting. I think your workflow is kind of what's curious to me. Back in the video game days, we're very technical, and then even with like your music stuff now, it's all kind of a very big process of like random ideas and some calculated ideas, and it's really cool. Has Skrillex ever acknowledged your remixes before?
Apparently he has. I've not got any proof of this though, but I've had people who know him or have met him before have mentioned me to him, and he's gone, "Oh yeah, Karl." I'm like, and then yeah, so I don't know whether they could be talking out their arse for all I know. Some people tell me that Skrillex knows of my remixes, but I've never heard him play them out. So I just have to take the word for it.
That's cool though. That's pretty cool. And then another remix you did just recently with Laura Brem and Rob Gasser. How did that come about?
That came about by NCS approaching me to remix the song.
Gotcha. That's cool. And you've done stuff with NCS before. What's your relationship with them?
Be careful what I say now. No longer continuing.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And because you have released music on a couple different labels, you've worked with a few, such as like, well, NCS would be one. Odio, also worked with Exobolt. What's your relationship with Exobolt? Because I know you guys all kind of like run in the same circle, right?
Yeah, Exobolt. The circle with that and the relationship with that is I'm good friends with the people who run it already. So Alex and Jonathan, for example, they're some of the best dudes I've ever met. Honestly, like. I spent last weekend with them, in fact, and Tiago and stuff like that, and Sekai. And we just had a good night. And it was one of those things where, I don't know, they're just really fun to be around, and they're genuine people. They genuinely care. Then they're just honest, straightforward people. They don't mess around like some other labels might do that I mentioned a few minutes ago. So, yeah, it's just... yeah, I love them, and what they do is I think really good and so honest as well. Everything's so open and honest about the label and them as people, and I love that about them. It's very rare that you ever feel like something is open in terms of labels and stuff like that. So that's nice.
I can definitely second your opinion on that. I mean, I've met the guys, I've worked with them a bit, and they are just totally cool. I love how chill they are, very honest, but they're also very dedicated. I think that's the important thing, is that they don't really they have great morals and all that kind of stuff, but they also work very hard at what they do, and I think they deserve a lot of respect for that. Looking at like the kind of collaboration kind of side of things, so we talked about remixes and labels and such. What are some of your dream collabs?
So the first one would be anything with Rob Swire from Knife Party and Pendulum, because I've spoken to him before, and honestly, I've never met a dude so clever in terms of music and engineering and the way everything goes, the harmonics of a sound, the way things fit together. Honestly, it just resonates with me perfectly. I would love to know what he could show me, what I could show him in real life, and I think we could make some really cool shit, to be honest with you. Yeah, that's number one. Number two, I'm just gonna have to say Skrillex, because for the exact same reasons, except I know Skrillex more as a person from his persona, so I would say I associate with him personally well, but only because of aspiration. I think he's a very good role model for a lot of people. He is very genuine and very honest, just like Alex and Jono. Seems, yeah, he does whatever he does. He improvises. It works out. It doesn't. If it doesn't, he embraces it. If it does, he embraces it. It's just a very positive attitude towards everything, and it resonates with a lot of people around him. And that's the kind of thing I think I would love to have next to me, or just close to me as an environment. Because we think very similarly. I think because of the fact that I spent so long studying my perception of his methods and engineering techniques, because that's pretty much what everyone is their influences all mashed together, their perception of how something could be done or is done, and then that's what they are, that's what they sound like. That's essentially what I am. I'm basically influenced by 4 or 5 different artists, like, the orchestral nature of Linkin Park's breakdowns, the growling nature and choppy nature of Skrillex, and in more recent times, the more mid-tempo, housey electro side of Knife Party, and then the drum and bass of Pendulum and Metric and all the classic D&B artists, stuff like that. That's essentially what I am.
I love that. It's true as well. I mean, like, we were all kind of, like you said, we were all kind of a combination of, like, our influences, and it kind of comes together to make us, who we are. Go ahead. What's the last? If you have one more, what's the last collab you would love to do?
Maybe Rogue from Monster Cat, because I honestly think that his melodies and his composition skills are absolutely divine and just generally emotionally beautiful. Some of the stuff, like he's another person that's influenced me early on as well. My Blaze stuff, especially the Blaze stuff, and Subsound as well. My good friend Subsound, he influenced both of us. We spent days, nights out on Skype trying to figure out how he did stuff, and that's one of the most fun things. I love having a partner who thinks similarly and wants to have the same kind of goal. I work really well in that environment, so we spent a lot of time figuring things out that Rogue did, and we used to share. Like, I remember being so hype on the releases, and then just send it to each other like, this is so cool, it's absolutely hyped for it. Yeah, Rogue is probably the third one. He's a genuine, once again, a genuine guy, I think.
You said something really interesting just now. You talked about how you love to have someone who kind of shares your creative energy, someone who shares your creative drive. And I know from personal experience, like, how difficult it is to find people like that. I feel like you have a few people around you like that now, or that you've met before in the past. What advice would you give to the listeners on how to find someone who can kind of match your energy or match your creative drive? Is there any tips you have for how to meet that kind of person?
Don't be afraid to approach people, no matter what your perception is of them, because I've had a lot of times people assume I might be an arsehole or intentionally hard to reach just because I have like 8K on SoundCloud, when in real world that means nothing, and I'm still a person. Take away the numbers and the plays, whatever. I'm still a person. I'm not any different to how I was a decade ago. Really, I'm still the same. So you need to remember that people are still people. There's an alias in front of that person, but they're still a person. So approach them. It doesn't matter. The worst they can do is just, it says scene 2158. And that's, just message them, email them, give them your stuff. Don't do it obsessively. Do it with common sense. Just, if you think X might like your new track or whatever, and you think they might maybe even play it out, and they're asking for promo, just send them a copy. Send it straight to them. Keep it short and sweet, and stuff like that.
It's very true. It's very true. Like you said, the numbers are totally irrelevant in real life. A person is a person, So reaching out, like you said, worst thing to do is ignore you. I think it's important to keep in mind to the audience is that if they don't get back to you, understand that they are busy people. They might not have seen your message or your email or whatever it was. So, but that shouldn't stop you from trying.
Yeah. Well, bear in mind we're on the internet, so we're all introverts initially from the get-go. Most of us. So if you don't get a response from someone, or they might not want to talk to you, it's, for where we are and what we're doing, it's pretty damn normal, to be honest with you. And people have lives as well. Just because you're sat in the PC looking at Facebook Messenger doesn't mean that they are. They could be out somewhere completely different. They could be in a different country performing, getting ready for a show. They could be having on a night out. You never know. Stuff like that. So that's one thing I will say as well is try and give people a bit more respect in terms of their privacy, and just think about it in terms of if you were to approach you, act how you would want to see yourself. So if you think, oh, that's a bit forward, then don't say it.
The golden rule, right?
Yeah, just reevaluate like what you're going to say. Put yourself in their shoes of looking at the message that you are sending them, and just think, what's appropriate here? It's not that hard when you think about it calmly.
100%, man, 100%. And yeah, I was curious a little bit if you have like what kind of artists have you worked with or collaborated with?
I collaborate with all of them are friends now, to be honest, but. I've made a couple of collabs that aren't released and maybe scrapped, but Laszlo from Monster Cat is one of them. Subsound, Decembra, Chime, Nushonic, X-Core. I can't really. There's so many, man. So many.
The list goes on. Yeah. Was there any specific collabs that you particularly enjoyed working on?
I enjoyed working on the Sense Overload remix because it happened so fast. Because we originally had a different version of it made. We were going to make a drum and bass version of it, and so at the end of the night we were just like, let's try this. And then the next day, December like completely scrapped that idea and started again. We called it dubstep version, and he made this very, very vague drop idea that lasted a couple seconds. And I'm just like, that's perfect. Let's go with that. And honestly, working on that was so fun. Same with Cut the Check that I made with him as well, that was released on NCS. That was another one of the most fun ones I ever worked on. It just fell into place. Cut the Check was actually a project of December's that was scrapped and deemed not worth releasing. It was just a whip of his, and I thought, man, this has got so much potential. It sounds so good. She needs a bit of updating with the production, maybe a bit more variation in the sounds, and honestly, I don't think it could have been any better at the time. It just was one of those things where I was so happy with it, and everyone was hyped about it too. And it did well, so I can't complain about those at all.
Right, man, I gotcha. That's super cool, and I was interested as well because you mentioned there's a few stuff that you're kind of sleeping on, you haven't put out yet. How often do you go back and pull like back catalog tracks out and work on them again or release them? How often does that happen?
Apocalypse is a very good example of that, actually, because I started the original Apocalypse track in 2015, which would have been half a year, if not a year, after I changed from place. And that was just a very vague idea I had. Yeah, and that took 3 years to be released. So I worked on it for far too long and put far too much effort into that EP, to be honest with you, for what I got out of it. But I've learned from that now. I've learned that at a certain point you've got to stop and say, this is finished. Release it now. I'm doing it. I do it all the time. I have a list of things. I have a Dropbox of like all my whips and shit like that, and all organized into folders. And I occasionally I go back and think, what has potential to be released now? What can I change now with what I know now? Because I might know something different next week that might make something a lot more viable to finish, or rework in a way that works better now. And it relies a lot on that, basically.
By the way, I loved your Apocalypse EP. We're talking about that. You said it was you didn't get much back from it, but honestly, dude, sonically, I really enjoyed it. I thought like Adventure was my favorite song off the EP, but it was a good release. I
enjoyed working on Left Behind the most, and Adventure. I'm actually kind of secretly mad that Left Behind didn't do that well. Like, did the worst stat-wise, because I honestly thought that would do the best. I never expected Adventure to do the best at all. I was that took me by surprise, to be honest with you. But at least one of them did. Can't complain, really.
Dude, that's the worst, but sometimes it happens. Like, the songs that us producers feel are like our best piece of work, like, the audience sleeps on, they just don't get it. It's like, That's kind of what happened when I released that remix recently, or like last Friday. It's just, everyone just felt like they were a resident sleeper, to be honest with you. Because it took me... I remember seeing Temanite, my friend Temanite, release a track, and it got like 500 plays in about 20 minutes, and it took
a day for me to achieve 200 plays, and I thought, wow, what's going on here? And this is another reason why I want to change things up, because I feel like one of the biggest mistakes I might have made with some of the last releases I've done, latest releases, is releasing things on the wrong demographic label. Audio is primarily known for rhythm. There's nothing remotely rhythm on my EP. And there's nothing remotely rhythm on the remix coming up at the end of the month on audio as well. So, and then the drum and bass remix on NCS, I've never seen that before. So I think a lot of it is aiming things in the wrong direction and then expecting a return. I think that's what's going on. So I've now realized this mistake. I've also figured out who to work with and who not to work with. So that will also be a few changes going forward. And I also feel like my artwork no longer represents how I perceive myself and how I think I want to be perceived. So I think I might go through a rebrand near the end of the year. Not name-wise, just artwork-wise, a new symbol maybe, a new logo. So a different art direction, something a bit friendlier to the eye, a bit more marketable. Not quite slushy, where it's just a rainbow in my hair. But it's gonna be something. No buckets over my face calling myself Marshmallow though. I can show you this.
Sure, but something that can represent you more. That's really interesting, dude, and I think it's cool. How often do you look at your career and question, like, am I doing the right thing? Or how often do you kind of analyze your career?
As of recently, a lot more than I used to. Because times change, and I feel like I may be too far back now in the scheme of things progressing. So I've got a couple of plans of things I want to improve of myself, things I want to improve of my music, things I want to venture into, things like that. Yeah, I have plans in my head, vague plans, and things I've written down recently that I want to achieve next year. So there's probably going to be a couple of changes near the end of the year, I think.
Fantastic. Good luck on that. I know the action is the hard part, honestly. Like it's fairly easy to see, like where we're slipping at or where we need to improve at, but taking action can be a bit tedious. Do you struggle with taking action on stuff?
Yeah, because it's all well and good figuring out the problem, but executing it is a whole different ballgame. Like, figuring out where to release something. Well, I have a couple of things that I want to release near November, December. I have no idea where they can go, and I have no idea and the places I would love for them to go, I don't know whether I can reach in contact with, like, Ausla, for example. I have a couple of tracks that I worked on that a couple of people said, oh, this would fit Ausla. But I'm like, that's cool, but how do I show them?
Right. Just reach out to them, right? They just label. Just reach out to them.
Hey, Sonny, if you're listening. Yeah.
Doesn't always work that way.
More unreleased music coming your way. Spitfya teamed up with music producer Guillotine to craft this beast of a track, which is currently untitled. Enjoy.
differently and unpredictably on each individual user, occasionally with disastrous results. Disastrous results. Disastrous results. Disastrous results. Disastrous results.
And then speaking about changes, let's look a little bit at like the genre side of stuff, because like to me, I feel like I'm not a big fan of genres to make a kind of a vague statement there. I don't like how it can like limit creativity and kind of box stuff in, you know. So I was curious how you feel about just like genres and the way that people kind of box themselves in with how a genre is supposed to sound. Versus artistically, if that makes any sense.
That's kind of funny. Yeah, it makes sense. That's kind of funny that you mentioned that, because I recently saw a comment on the NCS release of my remix of the Rob Gasser one, and I saw a comment that said, that was arguing with people saying this is drum step. I'm like, and I actually commented, I don't know why I bothered, but I commented, no, this is drum and bass. And they were like, how do you know? I made it. I made the remix. I know exactly what this is.
Oh.
He's like, but this is 174. This is drum step. I'm like, no, there is no... Drum step is drum and bass style dubstep. It's drum and bass tempo dubstep. There is no dubstep in this. There's not a single bass apart from the sub bass in this. And then people just kept going on and on and on.
Unbelievable!
There's a massive comment chain.
Dude,
This is clearly opera, my friend. Oh, fucking kill me.
wow. Lesson learned: don't go to the comment section on YouTube.
Oh, exactly. I keep forgetting every now and again. I'm like, has it changed? I just peek my head out of the shelter. I'm like, is it safe now? And then someone's like,
Get your head chopped off, bro.
yeah. And someone's just like, you have an opinion, not allowed.
But yeah, and let's get into that a little bit more. Do you think a lot about genre whenever you're creating? Do you like to think in terms of like, oh, it needs to be this BPM, needs to have this sound, or whatever?
Kind of. Sometimes I'll have like a certain style in my head that I want to achieve. A couple of I have in my head like a queue of things I want to recapture myself. Like songs I may have heard or atmospheres they might have presented that I want to capture in something of my own and do something with that specific vibe. That's normally how I go about things. Like the Rob Gasser remix, I literally thought, okay, so I'm not making it dubstep because it already is like melodic dubstep, so I'm not doing that. I will never really remix something into the same thing that it already is. I refuse to do that because I think that's pointless. Although, you know, dubstep into rhythm, I suppose you could say, is different-ish. But when it comes to something melodic, yeah, like pretty much every remix I've done is different from the original. I suppose the only one is I think the only one that's similar in genre is Shots Fired by E-Hyde and Side Project that I did a couple of years ago. But everything else, like, you know, Vertigo is obviously, it was not originally drum and bass. You got Sense Overload, which was drum step. Now it's dubstep, heavy rhythm-ish dubstep. And then, yeah, a lot of other things. And then you got Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites, which is now some sort of melodic hybrid of whatever the hell it is. Stuff like that. I like changing things to be different. I like things to sound like they kind of used to, but in a different way. Because that's one thing I don't like about certain remixes people put out is they do a remix of it, but what they really have done, like some of the Granite remixes from the Pendulum contest on Splice recently, a lot of them were just, I have a project that I've already made. I'm just going to slap in the vocals in the wrong key in there, and that'll be a remix. And it's like, no, man, no. I want to hear some nostalgia in there. I want it to feel relevant to what's going on with the vocals. Otherwise, it's just kind of pointless to me.
That makes sense, man. That makes sense.
And the remix I did for Rob was very much built around the vocals, entirely built around the vocals. I spent a lot of time making artificial harmonies for Laura's voice for some reason. I like to overkill that kind of stuff in my remixes and tracks. I love vocal processing.
What do you prefer more, doing remixes or doing originals?
Remixes, because it's really hard to think of something from nothing. But when you have something, it's much easier to go. Because your mind starts, once you have like a certain foundation. That's kind of how originals go for me as well sometimes, but very rarely. But if I ever do a remix, my mind will start adding things that don't exist to it, and I'll make that. So I'll hear, like, I'll start messing around with a vocal or a chord progression that's in the original song, and I'll start imagining what goes next, which is something that's very hard to do for me sometimes. And that's kind of what happened. Like, I come up with a very, very basic idea. Like the Rob Gasser remix started off as just a chorus. It was just a 7-second chorus. It was just a drop, and there was no vocal glitch on the chorus. It was just the guitar and the drums. that's all I need really. Is just, does this work like this? Yes, cool. Let's keep going.
Super cool, man. It makes me think about how you kind of your start in creating kind of stuff was doing the video games, and you kind of, if I make an assumption here, but you were kind of working with other characters such as Sonic or whatever, and then you would make new stuff from that. I think that kind of mirrors itself here with the remixes.
Oh yeah, I'm a very creative person. Yeah, I like figuring things out that seem impossible. I'm a very, very, very curious person, almost to a fault.
Right, man. And then the same way, like how you're recreating stuff or putting your own spin on like pre-existing material. I think that's another recurring factor of your life. It's really cool because not everybody can do that. And then another thing I wanted to ask is because you mentioned previously when we started about how you feel like a lot of dubstep is kind of repetitive or uninspired. That being said, what kind of artists are on your radar these days for creativity?
They would be people like Subsound, Sekai, Laszlo, Rogue, Tristan. Recently I like a lot more melodic stuff. In Fowler as well is another one. I like more melodic stuff to listen to. I don't like. That's one thing that people don't know about me as well. Is whenever I listen to stuff casually, it will never be a rhythm song. It won't really be a dubstep song. It'll be something chill. It'll be an electro song, a house song, liquid drum and bass. It'll be Pendulum, Prodigy. It'll be something not too aggressive and something a bit more harmonically pleasing to my ears.
Makes sense, man. And a lot of people do know you as like a dubstep producer. Does that bother you?
Yes. Yes, it does.
Vent, man. Go ahead, vent.
It bothers me because I'm not about that anymore, really. I used to think, like a lot of people probably still do now, dubstep all the time, 24/7, like, make dubstep. What's the next dubstep I'm going to make? And now it's just, I just do whatever comes to mind. And I don't care what it is. I just go with it. Another couple of people would be Virtual Riot, Rogue, Decembra, Knife Party, a guy called Synthis, Volve, Chime, Virtual Riot, Inverted Silence. Yeah, those kind of people. There's people I've heard recently, Punker as well. The people that I've heard stuff recently that makes really captures me emotionally. And it's very hard. It's very hard to do that to me. To make me listen to something over and over and over again is very difficult for most people to do, which is exciting and depressing.
Yeah, well, it's same for me. I know what you mean. So, that being said, are you overall happy with like the current music scene, or do you see like a lot of need for change?
I think there's a lot of need for change, because now. There's positives and negatives to providing more people with assets. So, my example will be Serum. Serum, for me, which is a VST, for those that don't know.
Right, for the audience that doesn't know, Serum's a very popular VST for creating music.
It does things lazily for you. Things that would normally characterize a sound now generalize a sound's tone, if you know what I mean. So there was this plugin in Ableton called Multiband Compressor, and it had a preset called OTT. So Xfer decided to make a plugin based on that, and then Serum decided to have that as a feature in the effects chain section. So now everyone has access to these things that used to be very specialist. And people that use these things used to know what they were doing, how they could be manipulated, how to get the best out of them, when not to use it, when it doesn't work, when there could be a better alternative. A lot of people just stick to things that they know, that they've been told. So, like, one massive misconception that I've seen is people will put OTT on the master chain of a track, and think that's what Skrillex does. No. Not even close, my friend. You are miles off. And I'm actually gonna tell people how it's done, because it pisses me off when people do it this way. So OTT first of all in your master completely crushes the crap out of the dynamics, right? And destroys the treble. Yes, you could raise it back up again, but now you've got distortion. Good luck with that. So what you do is, how Skrillex used it and how Knife Party used it was they used it on individual sounds with different like variations depending on the sound. They didn't just have a certain like version of the preset, call it fat lol, and just drag on everything. They did it on a per sound basis with specific tuning involved, like you would with an EQ. If you know how to EQ properly, you would take things down, boost things up. You don't just have a general EQ that boosts like a load of specific frequencies down just because your friend told you to. Because, you know, I can tell you something, but if you don't know how to use it, it's pointless. If I tell you like to remove a frequency somewhere, you might be like, okay, I'll do that. Now it sounds better, but you don't know why. Not really. And you don't know how to do it with something else that might be conflicting as well. So it's that people don't seem to learn, and technology hasn't helped this either. And some of the new things like Serum and some other things, somatic sample packs. People don't make their own drums anymore. People don't experiment with drums anymore. People don't go hunting for really rare samples that make their drums kits sound unique. Now everyone just kind of sounds the same. Like that's the problem I have. Like, all of these common ideals now make everyone sound so similar to me that it's incredibly depressing. So you've got OTT on the masters, now everyone's dynamics are very similar. You've got Serum, which facilitates the same tone characteristics of a sound, so now everyone's sounds sound similar. Because everyone does it the same way, because that's what everyone thinks should be done, not what they want to do. Not like, because they don't explore. They just go, that's the way it's done, that's the way I'm doing it. They don't go, what if I did this? What if I did this? What if I did this? Or what if I just said no to this? And then you've got the drums, the somatics drums. They use the same packs as each other, the same loops as each other, and then you basically get modern music, which is 90% of people sound exactly the same. If you put all of those people in a mix, guarantee you, 90% of them you could not tell who is who. They would all sound the same. You would mistake every single one, apart from certain people, like Chime, X-Core, Schism, maybe even Skrillex, Knife Bite, Pendulum. There's certain people, that's why I respect them a lot, and that's why I love to work with them, because they didn't succumb. Kill the Noise is an example of someone who did succumb to the common trend and lost their sound. I think Kill the Noise has completely lost his sound. His old sound that he used to have. I used to have a lot of respect for the guy. Still do, really. But musically, I've lost touch with him, because a lot of the stuff that he makes now just sounds like a Zomboy impression, which is what most people sound like anyway. Zomboy and Must Die started this trend of metallic sounds, and Serum facilitates that incredibly. And one of the main things I hear about people's music is, whenever I hear demos, when I A&R for some labels, a lot of them have a very common problem now, whereas drops sound incredibly stereo, but there's nothing in the mono region. And I don't know about you, but if I expect a drop to be in my face, not around the side of my head.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So like incredibly stereo, a drop for me is full, but it's not around my head and not in front of my face. Like that, for me, that's not full. That's just disorientating and strange. So a lot of people don't know how to control their stereo imaging of their sounds. Because they use the same techniques. The result of this is their sounds are too stereo. And because of this, they don't know how to control that. They think that sounds normal. It doesn't to me. And some other people as well, some old people, classic people, it sounds terrible. So a lot of those things bother me with modern music, and it's why I don't really follow that many people anymore. A lot of the people I follow are my friends. So yeah, a lot of the people that I said I would love to work with or have worked with are just friends of mine now, and as well as me liking their music, because I respect them musically, regardless of their personality. That they still sound like them. They don't see everyone else and go, "I'll join in." They may look at what they're doing, they'll learn something from it, but they won't lose who they are. And that's really important to me as a listener.
Dude, that's fantastic, man. So much good insight you just shared right there. I think one of the interesting things you mentioned is that you're friends now with the people that influence you. I think that's really important, is to like surround yourself with like-minded people who have the same energy and drive, because ultimately that makes you stronger, right? So if you're one producer doing that unique sound, you're not as powerful as if you have like 5 or 10 people, doing that unique sound, working together in like a group motion. I think that's important for the audience listening to surround themselves with people that are on their same kind of mission. Other thing I would say is you talked a lot about how like 90% of people in the music industry are doing like the same stuff. That can be, you know, like a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's a bad thing because of the majority of music, you know, you don't enjoy it. On the flip side, there's opportunity there, right? So like I think there's a lot of opportunity for people like you doing like the extra work, putting in that unique sound. You can capture attention better because you're playing like that kind of the market that's underplayed right now. So best of luck to you and your squad on that.
That also costs a lot of things in hindsight as well, because I'm not following trends, because I'm not following the wave. I end up suffering a bit with reception and engagement. It's kind of one of the reasons why I've kind of slowed down in the last 2 years in growth, I think. I've not really been following... I honestly believe if I released Apocalypse 3 years ago, it would have absolutely exploded so much more than it has. It would have done so much better. But because it wasn't... It feels... When I released Apocalypse, it felt too late. At the time, it just slightly passed. And I think the stats, the engagement, the reception has kind of presented that exact problem. It's not a massive problem. It's not an extensive problem, but it is one, and it's something I'm wary of. A lot of my songs that do well are usually ones I don't expect to do that well, but I understand why they did when I see them do it. So Backfire, for example, that I released on audio 9 months ago. That did well, but that's because I think it's a very experimental and slightly more modern version of myself in terms of song and composition. It's very bass housey, and bass housey is quite cool right now with most people. And that's one thing I wanted to explore more as well. I want to explore what is my version of something that is common? What is my version of something that I don't like, but could I turn it into something I do? Do you know what I mean? That's kind of what a lot of my stuff is. It's taking something I do or don't like and trying to make it into something that appeals to myself. Whether everyone else likes it or not is difficult.
Yeah, 100%, dude. And I'm glad you can see that because to me it's very obvious. I mean, I think that's what you've done your whole life, your whole career is that kind of motive right there. So good luck with it. Stick with it. I did have a question though, because as we've seen in the internet music scene, we've gone from drum and bass being huge to dubstep being huge to electro house and future bass, and now it's lo-fi. What do you think the next genre trend is going to be?
I think it's going to go back to house and electro. Honestly, I think dubstep's going to die tremendously in the next 5 years. And I think something's going to take its place. I'm not too sure what it will be, really. I know what I would want it to be. I would love me some glitch up. Some common glitch up. I miss that shit, honestly. Like Cohen sounds, some classic Cohen sound and stuff like that.
Let's get it, man.
I'd love me some glitch up, man, and stuff like that. It's a bit more drum and bass to come a bit more prevalent again. But as far as what I think is going to rise, I honestly haven't a clue. I don't follow it that much, to a fault as well. Like I'm very much a nostalgia musician. I live in the past mentally with my production. Hence why I still do Skrillex kind of shit. So, I mean, I'm still studying shit Skrillex did like almost a decade ago. So, you know, you can kind of see where my head's at. Although I'm trying to push past that now. I'm trying to move forward with my mentality and what I'm learning. I'm trying to modernize myself. It's a heavy process, but I'm working on it. Hopefully next year is a good reflection of that.
Definitely. Best of luck with that, man. I mean, you have a lot of thoughts in mind. You kind of know what's going on, and all that's left is to take action. So best of luck to you, Spitfya. Spitfya, we have one last section on the show. I do like a, not to repeat myself, but like a Spitfya round, basically, where I ask a question, you give a quick answer. So cool. Let's do the Spitfya round with Spitfya.
Okay.
All right, man. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. What is your favorite food?
Pasta or rice with any sort of sauce.
What is your favorite weekend activity?
Gaming.
What is your favorite color?
Blue.
What countries do you want to visit?
Germany, Canada, maybe Australia.
And finally, what languages do you speak?
English and bullshit.
all right. That's our guy Spitfya right there. Spitfya, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your thoughts, man. Is there any last words you want to say to the audience?
Stay frosty.
Stay frosty. You guys heard it here first. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'm going to give you guys links to his stuff. I really encourage you to check out his sound. It's got a lot of like variety and diversity. He does heavy stuff. He does more lighthearted stuff. It's all sick. So I'm going to give you guys links to his stuff. Check it out. And I will be with you next week on the Creators Lounge podcast. Thank you and goodbye.
Responding in kind, the look in your eye tells me where you want me to be. Give me a light, let's open the night. It's a start, let's make something new again. Don't let me go, I have no regrets. We are only human in the shape of time. Don't let me go, I have no regrets. We are only human in the shape of time.